And we're gonna start. Okay, got the recording. And now, there we go. Hello. Hello, everyone. How have you guys been doing today? I got, I got a little cut on my my little thumb here. Oh, poor little thumb. Anyway, I'm doing great. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Every Which Way podcast. I'm not going to be able to stop looking at this cut until no, I'm not. I'm not. But hey, welcome back to the Every Which Way podcast. It's wonderful to have you guys back. Welcome. This is your first episode, my name is Dana, and yeah, I've been doing pretty good. I made myself a nice iced coffee today, and that was wonderful. I'm still drinking it, so yay! But I also went out to Target and I got myself these new Sharpie S gel pens. So my one coworker, Jason, he had one and I stole it from him. Well, he said I could keep it after I told him I took it, but it was one of these gel pens, and I was like, "This is amazing!" So I need to get myself some. So I did. But how are you guys doing? How has life been for you? Um, is it getting nice and uh, warmish or just sunny where you live, or is it just starting to get cooler where you live? I would love to know. So this past weekend, um, well, I guess when you're listening to it, it would be this coming weekend for me. But the 22nd, my two best friends, Kathleen and Helen, hey girls, and I went antiquing, and I found myself a nice little agate uh, ashtray. Had to think about that, and I was very surprised. It was only like $3.50, so that's pretty cool. But if you're watching this on the Patreon, this is what it looks like. That's pretty neat. And I also found this little mesh candle holder that has stars and a moon on it. And that's really nice. I got a candle going in it. So, yeah. Well, what am I talking about today? Well, I know that the last episode I spoke about astronomy and astrology and the differences that they have and some history on them and all that good jazz. And the reason why, aside from the fact that, I want to, is because it was leading up to today. So today I am talking about understanding astrology, specifically with birth charts and a lot of terminology. So I'm going to be saying a lot of things that, if you're not very familiar with astrology as it is, may be a little weird to hear at first. But thankfully, because it's a podcast, you can listen to it multiple times. And I'm really hoping that I did a good job of trying to put it into terms that everyone can understand, including me. Because I know that I'm still learning about astrology myself, and this is part of the reason why I wanted to do this episode and talk about these things, is not just for you guys, but also for my own personal learning as well. So I just want to let you know that we are all in the same boat. I'm learning, you're learning, we're all learning. It's a great time. We're just here to have a good time. So let's get right into it. So First, there are many different kinds of astrology and charts that go along with that. We have sidereal, we have tropical, horary, electional, medical, Vedic, just to name a few. Sidereal astrology is popular mostly in the East, in places especially like India. Now, this astrology uses the visible sky for its zodiac system. There are many forms of this, all of which reference the visible sky. This dates back to roughly 10,000 years in India and pre Babylonian cultures. And the essence of sidereal astrology is basically it's used to describe the essence of the personality and soul. And tropical astrology, on the other hand, is primarily what is most familiar and used in the West and is quite common online. Not saying that sidereal astrology isn't, because it is, but when usually you think of astrology, tropical astrology is what comes to mind, at least for people here in the United States, mostly. So, tropical astrology, the seasons of the earth are used for the zodiac system. So, the zodiac wheel begins at the vernal point, where the sun is in the sky during the vernal or spring equinox. And all planets passing over the vernal point enter the first zodiac sign, which is Aries. Tropical astrology is much younger than sidereal, having been around 2,000 years, roughly. It is particularly accurate for sun signs, and it describes the more physical 3D aspects of the personality and soul. In tropical astrology, around the time of the vernal equinox, Aries and the zodiac wheel begins. When the Aries constellation itself is first visible in the sky is when sidereal astrology and the wheel of the zodiac begins for that. So the zodiac wheel starts and ends in tropical astrology first, with sidereal following closely behind. Now, both sidereal and tropical astrology used the visible sky roughly 2,000 years ago. During that time period, the sun entered Aries in both during the spring equinox. Due to the visible sky being difficult to calculate, the seasons were used as that was easier and, at that time, the more logical solution. However, the sun doesn't always return to the same point in the sky. It actually moves approximately 1 full degree every 72 years. So a little increment bit by bit, but never in the exact positioning all the time. And this becomes apparent over a long time, and is why tropical astrology is a little bit ahead of sidereal today. That being said, both are legitimate and accurate. It's really whatever personal preference or whatever you grew up with. It's just whatever you wish to use. And of course, there are other subjects and charts that are used in astrology. One of the most prevalent, I think, and usually the one that people hear about the most, is the natal or the birth chart. Now, this shows the placement of the celestial bodies at the exact place and time of birth. It is all about who a person is, their personality, their traits, and their self-awareness. And all right, and we're back. I had to pause and let Salem into the room. Anyway, so after that, we have relationship astrology. And there are 2 charts that are found in particular for this subject of astrology. The first one is synastry charts. These are used to provide insight on how individuals interact and their relationship dynamics. This is a tool for assessing the relationship compatibility through the individual's astrological points. And I do believe that these are two separate charts. So, and this is not just like romantic relationship, but any relationship. But I do believe that for synastry chart readings, it's two different charts. I could be wrong about that. Don't quote me on it. And the reason why I say that is because of the next chart, which is the composite chart. And this is a singular chart for a relationship that examines that relationship in its entirety. So, how it functions, its strengths, and the challenges. After that, we come to medical astrology, which, as it implies, studies the connection between human health and celestial bodies. In this area, the sixth house is a major focal point, and we will explore a little bit about the houses today. So, after that, there is electional astrology, which is primarily used to narrow down what times are best for events and what actions would be favorable to make them a success. We have transit charts, which track the current positions of celestial bodies in relation to an individual's birth chart. It highlights the opportunities and influences in the present time. There are progressed charts, which help to reflect personal growth over time. There are solar return charts that center around when the sun returns to the exact position it was during a person's birth. And this is used as a guide and to help lay out an outline or predict the year ahead. And I say predict a little loosely because nothing is ever set in stone. But I do want to just make that very clear. Okay. And of course, if we have a solar return chart, that means we also have a lunar return chart. And this chart focuses on the moon returning to the birth position each month and focuses on the emotional priorities and themes that accompany it. There is horary astrology that is used to answer specific questions at precisely when the questions are asked. This helps to give the most immediate and precise insights possible. We have Vedic astrology, which comes from ancient Indian astrology, and by Indian I mean astrology that is from India. It divides the houses into good, bad, or neutral. These charts give detailed interpretations of one's life path, opportunities, and obstacles. But for the sake of the episode today, I'm going to be focusing primarily on tropical astrology and natal or birth charts today. So whenever I say natal or birth chart, I'm talking about the same type of chart. I'll probably be using them interchangeably. I just want to get that out of the way right now. So where can you get charts done? Where can you get all this done? Well, you could, of course, get it done in person, whether by someone who actually physically does them, which is a little bit rare, or online. And the website that I use the most for my own personally is astrocharts.com. But there are so many others. We have cafeastrology.com and astroseek.com, just name a few. It's whatever is your preference. And of course, if you want, you can always seek out an astrologer to help understand your chart. So, what all does a birth chart entail or list? Well, some things, depending on where you go online specifically, can either list any one of the following things or not. Now, primarily, they do list the celestial bodies, the luminaries, so like the sun and the moon, the planets, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Some may list the North Node and the South Node, or just the North Node. And I'm going to explain what all of these are here in a bit. Some may list Chiron, the ascendant or rising sign, the midheaven, the nadir, aspects and angles, patterns, shapes, Lilith, which is also referred to as Dark Moon Lilith, the descendant sign, and the houses. Now, depending on where you go, they might have all of those things that I listed, they might have more, or they might just have a few. It just depends. So, to put it in a nutshell, as far as the bare bones basic understanding of your birth chart, the planets. Oh, excuse me. Oh, I'm so sorry. Hold on. I had to pause, do a little coffee cough, but I'm okay now. Anyway, so getting back to what I was saying, the planets show us what is happening in a chart. The signs show us how it is happening in the chart, and the houses show us where it is happening in the chart. So I'm going to run down a lot of terms. Just let it go. Okay, just listen and re-listen, because I'm going to talk about the celestial bodies. I'm going to talk about terminology in relation to those celestial bodies. I'm going to talk about some things that aren't necessarily celestial bodies themselves, but still show up in charts. I'm going to talk about angles. Yes, like literally mathematical angles, and a whole bunch of stuff. And then I'm going to wrap up with the houses. Now, I do plan on covering all of the houses individually in a deep dive, but for today and for the sake of time, and because these notes got really, really long, I just want to give a bare bones description for you guys. But know that I will be covering all of the houses as well as these celestial bodies, so the planets and stuff, in depth later on in a different episode. But for today, this is just a sort of encyclopedia or dictionary to help with understanding your birth chart and what stuff means. Okay? All right, so let's get cracking. We're going to start with the sun. So the sun, which I know is not a planet, but it is a what is referred to as a luminary. So just know that if I say planet or celestial body, I'm talking about the sun through Pluto, kind of Chiron, I guess, if you want to get really technical about it. Anyway, so the sun is about the self. It is the ego, it is the conscious will, the power of the self, and individuality. The sun rules the sign of Leo. And it's, I guess, terminology or a phrase to sum up the sun sign in one fell swoop is I am. Okay. The moon. This is your heart. This is the emotions, sensitivities, intuition, instinct, and the unconscious mind. It is the spontaneous, emotional, and hidden part of the self. It rules the sign of Cancer, and its phrase is I feel. Mercury, the first planet, it is the planet of communication, perception, intelligence, and intellectual energy. It rules the signs of Gemini and Virgo. And if one were to sum up your Mercury placement, it is I think. And when I say these things, I am, I feel, I think. Like, if in your chart, say that your Mercury is in Aries, okay? So I think like an Aries, pretty much. I hope that makes sense. And I just want to make sure that that is understood, because I understood it, but I want to make sure that everyone understands it, okay? So, for example, your sun sign, say that my sun sign is Gemini. So I am a Gemini. My moon is in Taurus, so I feel like a Taurus. Okay, does that make sense? I hope so. Venus is the planet of beauty, beauty, art, aesthetics, love, pleasure, and affection. It rules the signs of Taurus and Libra, and its phrase is I love. Mars, this is the red planet, is the planet of aggression, of force, energy, and sexual desire. It rules the sign of Aries, but in the past, it also used to rule Scorpio. It doesn't anymore, but it did. And Mars's phrase is I act. Jupiter, Jupe Troop, is the planet of abundance, wisdom, good fortune, and expansion. It rules the sign of Sagittarius. In the past, it also used to rule the sign of Pisces, but it does not anymore. And Jupiter's phrase is I grow. Saturn. Saturn is the planet of responsibility, of discipline, limitation, and restriction. It rules the sign of Capricorn, but in the past, it used to also rule over Aquarius. And the phrase for Saturn is I achieve. Uranus is the planet of originality, change, revolution, and upheaval. It rules the sign of Aquarius, and its phrase is I evolve. Neptune, beautiful planet, the planet of imagination, illusion, mystery, and mysticism. It rules the sign of Pisces, and its phrase is I dream. And my personal favorite planet and my personal favorite Sailor Scout, we have Pluto, little baby Pluto, the planet of transformation, destruction, regenerative forces, and annihilation. This planet rules the sign of Scorpio, and its phrase is I empower. Now, those are the planets and the not planets. And now, in regards to them, you may have heard terms such as direct or retrograde. And I'm going to explain these terms. So direct. This is the term that is used for the forward motion of a planet or a celestial body in orbit through the zodiac signs. This is the normal course of a planet or celestial body. The next term in regards to planets is transit, and this is the term for the passage of a celestial body through a zodiac sign. So, for example, at the tail end of Aries, beginning into Taurus, the sun is transitioning from Aries into Taurus. Of course, the probably infamous term retrograde. Retrograde is an optical illusion that is caused by the angle of observation on the Earth. It makes the planets look like they are moving backwards, but in reality, they aren't. Traditionally, retrograde was regarded as being negative and weak, but astrologers today, on average, consider retrogrades as more positively, but the energy not manifesting until later on in life. And lastly, the term in regards to these planets and celestial bodies is stationary. This is yet another optical illusion where the planet or celestial body appears to be at a standstill or is not moving. Stationary celestial bodies are considered strong influences in a chart. The next, thing that I want to get into is Chiron. Now, what is Chiron? It is a minor planet and comet that orbits the sun in between Saturn and Uranus. It's often referred to as the wounded healer, and it represents our deepest wounds and our potential for healing and growth by facing those wounds. After Chiron, there is Lilith, which is alternatively called Dark Moon Lilith. And this is the mathematical point in the moon's orbit furthest from the sun, the literal void in the sky. I've also seen that Lilith is the dark side of the moon, which, again, because it is the furthest point from the earth. And Lilith represents repressed desires, taboos, our darkest selves, shadow sides, and how to reclaim autonomy and exploring that hidden self. And of course, you have your ascendant or rising sign. Now, the rising sign is the sign on the eastern horizon at the time of a person's birth. This is how the world views you, and is one of the 4 most important points in a chart. Of course, if we have an ascending sign, we have a descendant sign. And this is the sign that is opposite of that rising or ascendant sign. It represents close partnerships, relationships, open enemies, marriage, and what we seek in others. And again, it is one of the 4 most important points in a chart. The 3rd most important point in a chart would be your midheaven, or your medium cole, which literally translates to middle of the heavens. And it is located at the 12 o'clock position on your chart and is the opposite of the nadir. It represents one's public image, career path, aspirations, and reputations. And opposite of the midheaven is the nadir, the imam cole, the lowest part of the heavens. It's located at the 6 o'clock position and represents our depth and needs. We have the North Node, which is also referred to as the Ascending Node or the Caput Draconis, which is translated to Dragon's Head. The nodes, both north and south, are the 2 points where the orbit of the moon or planet intersect with the path of the sun, which the path of the sun is called the ecliptic. And the North Node in particular is the direction one is heading to in this lifetime. The South Node, which is also referred to as the Descending Node or the Cauda Draconis, Dragon's Tail, represents karmic lessons, strengths, and gifts that come from our past lives. All right, everyone with me so far? I know that was a lot. That can be a bit to handle, but I want to make sure that we are all on the same page and that we all get what I'm saying here. Okay, I hope so. And again, feel free to listen back to this. I'm trying very hard to not be a mush mouth, but sometimes I can't help it because I do have a speech impediment. But anyway, so let's talk about math. I know. Math was never my strongest suit in school, but that's okay. So, angles. Maybe you've heard mention of angles. Maybe you have gone online and actually done your own chart and you see that there's different shapes and geometrical patterns in your chart. That's what we're talking about, those shapes and patterns. So angles. These are the 4 cardinal points on a chart. 2 on the horizon and 2 on the meridian. And the meridian is the term for the vertical line of divide. So basically these 4 angles cut your chart into 4 quadrants or sections or pie pieces, okay? And these are the ascending / rising sign, the descendant, the midheaven, and the nadir. They're considered the most sensitive and important points in a birth chart. So we have afflictions. What are afflictions? Well, these are unfavorable or adverse aspects between celestial bodies in a chart, which usually indicates some sort of stress, disharmony, or difficulty. Popular opinion among modern astrologers is that afflictions reflect psychological issues that are needed to be worked through to achieve one's full potential. Well, what are aspects? And this is what I kind of mean where it's a bit of it can be quite a lot to take in, especially all at once with astrology, because there are a lot of terms and things to understand. But aspects, these are the geometrical shapes or patterns between the celestial bodies in a chart. There are major aspects, and I'm going to be covering them, and they are conjunction, trine, opposition, sextile, and square. But then we also have minor aspects, which is the semi-square, the semisextile, the quincunx, and the sesquisquare. I know I didn't say that right, but I'm just going with it. These aspects indicate whether there's harmony, ease, strain, power, or challenges between the celestial bodies in a chart. So a conjunction, because I'm going to be talking about all of these aspects. A conjunction is when there are two or more celestial bodies that occupy the same degree or are within 10 degrees of each other in a chart. This is a very powerful aspect due to it blending the energies of the celestial bodies into one cohesive unit. There's opposition, which is when two or more celestial bodies are opposite each other in a chart. It was traditionally seen as unharmonious, but this aspect is now considered more as a challenge bringer for growth by working through issues and problems. Sextile is when two or more celestial bodies are 60 degrees apart in a chart. While favorable and harmonious, effort must be made to reap the full benefits of this aspect, so it's not going to come easy. We have square, which is where two or more celestial bodies are 90 degrees apart. Traditionally considered malignant or harmful, this aspect is now interpreted more as presenting conflicts or obstacles needed to build character. And the last of the major aspects is trine. This is when there are two or more celestial bodies that are 120 degrees apart in a chart. It's regarded as the most harmonious and beneficial aspect. But because of that, it's commonly believed that it can lead to laziness or complacency due to success coming with little to no effort. Now, for the minor aspects, we have the quincunx, which is, and I know I'm saying that wrong, I'm sorry. So the quincunx is two or more celestial bodies that are 150 degrees apart in a chart. In the past, it was viewed as a mildly adverse aspect, but is now believed to be more powerful than initially thought. We have semisextile, which is when two or more celestial bodies are 30 degrees apart. This is less powerful than an actual sextile, and is a mildly favorable aspect. We have the semi-square, which is when two or more celestial bodies are 45 degrees apart. Mildly adverse, though not as powerful as a proper square. And then we have the sesquisquare, which is also called the sesquiquadrate. And this is when two or more celestial bodies are 135 degrees apart in a chart. The influence of this aspect is the same as a semisquare, mildly adverse. And then we have three aspects that are rare or not common to have in most charts. The first one we have is the Grand Cross. This is the rarest aspect pattern. It consists of two pairs of celestial bodies in opposition, so 4 total celestial bodies, which form a square aspect. Considered a difficult aspect as it alludes to an obsessive and maladjusted personality, but also signifies dynamic energy, force, and intensity. This is an aspect that's typically found in the charts of self-made individuals. We have the Grand Trine, which is considered an uncommon, unusual aspect pattern. This is made up of 3 planets, all in a trine to each other. So these 3 planets are all 120 degrees apart from each other to form a triangle. This aspect stresses a particular element, like, for example, water, which typically indicates to some sort of imbalance. This aspect also signifies enormous energy or creativity, and individuals with this in their chart are blessed with success and luck. And lastly, we have the T-square, which is another uncommon and unusual aspect. This pattern consists of 3 total planets, 2 of which are in opposition, while the third is halfway between them. Considered a difficult influence in a chart as it represents conflict, obstruction, and tension, but it motivates individuals to fight and resolve their problems. The T-square has appeared in the charts of famous people. Now, following that, we have a term called orb or orb of influence, which, can I just say that when I first came across this, it made me think of Sphere of Influence from the 2014 Godzilla film. And the reason why that stuck out to me is because that was such like a lame term for it. That was just like Sphere of Influence, what the heck? But yeah, there you go. Orb of Influence. I think that would make a good magic card too, if it's not already one. But this orb of influence is the range of degrees around a precise astrological aspect, where the influence of that aspect is still considered to be significant in a chart. So for example, if 2 planets are in a square, so they're 90 degrees apart, a 7-degree orb of influence means that they're still considered to be a square if they're in 7 degrees of each other. Next, we have decanate or decan, and this is the term for the 10-degree subdivision of the zodiac wheel that separates each zodiac sign into 3 parts, consisting approximately of 10 days. So that means that there are a total of 36 decans in the zodiac wheel, all of which have a subruler planet and a constellation. Now, these 10-degree subdivisions are used to refine and emphasize certain traits and qualities relating to the sign as a whole. And speaking of signs, we have different, classifications, categories that the signs fall under. And one of them being cardinal. So, cardinal signs include Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. And cardinal signs typically show qualities of leadership, action, initiative, and outgoing activity. The other classification is fixed, and this includes Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. And traits for this classification include resourcefulness, persistence, determination, and single-mindedness. And the last classification for the zodiac signs is mutable. For this classification, you've got Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces. The traits that these signs typically demonstrate are flexibility, adaptability, openness to change, and versatility. Next, we also have the term cusp. Maybe you've heard of that before, being on the cusp of something. This is the point where a zodiac sign begins, also used to refer to the line in a chart that marks the beginning of a house. And we're starting to dive into houses right now, but before we do that, there are also 3 categories of houses, just like there are 3 categories of classifications for zodiac signs. So we have angular houses. These are the 4 houses in a chart that follow immediately after the 4 angles. And the 4 angles, just in case you forgot, are the ascendant sign, the descendant sign, the midheaven, and the nadir. So the houses that are angular are the 1st, 4th, 7th, and 10th houses. Next, we have the succedent houses, which comes from the Latin word succedere, meaning to follow. This refers to the 4 houses that follow after the angular houses. So we're talking the 2nd, the 5th, the 8th, and the 11th houses. And last, we have the cadent houses, from the word cadere, Latin for to fall. These houses fall behind the succedent houses, and they're the third, the sixth, the ninth, and the 12th houses. So speaking of houses, let's talk about them themselves. So we've got the first house. This is the house of self. This house symbolizes the individual, their mannerisms and temperament, their disposition and style, their likes and dislikes, how they present themselves outwardly, and how others perceive them. In a chart, the first house begins with the rising sign due to the houses representing the Earth's 24-hour rotation. And again, this is the first angular house, so of course it's going to follow after that ascendant sign. This house is naturally ruled by the sign of Aries. We have the second house. This is the house of money and possessions. It is indicative of financial prospects, income, what one owns, and what one will gain or acquire. This is where your movable, tangible possessions fall under, as well as whatever projects and activities that may provide some additional income for you. This house is naturally ruled by the sign of Taurus. We have the third house. This is the house of communication. This includes individuals, how they express themselves, their family ties, and daily short distance travel. This house is how one thinks, how they speak, and how they write. Logical, manual skills, memory, how one learns and studies, and education received, particularly early in life, all fall under the jurisdiction of this house. And the third house is naturally ruled by the sign of Gemini. The fourth house is the house of home. This covers past, present, and future home life. It's considered one of 3 mystical houses. This is what kind of home one had in their childhood, as well as the relationship they had with their parents. It's what the individual of the chart has brought from their ancestors into this lifetime. And it also represents what is protected and secluded from the world by that individual. It primarily focuses on the later years in life and is naturally ruled by the sign of Cancer. The fifth house, the house of creativity and sex. This house rules creative expression, pleasures, sexual nature, children and the raising of children, the arts, amusement, entertainment, love affairs, vacations, and game of chance and gambling. It is sometimes called the house of the heart. Childhood pets and friends are also included within this house, and it is naturally ruled by the sign of Leo. The sixth house is the house of service and health, which is why it is a major focal point in medical astrology charts. This governs one's relationships with colleagues, coworkers, employers, and subordinates. It is the house that is indicative of how one feels the need to help others. And by that, I mean like in how they do their acts of service. This is also, of course, the house of health, overall health, illnesses that are caused by emotional upsets, what diseases the individual is susceptible to, and whether one possesses a delicate or robust constitution. The sixth house is naturally ruled by the sign of Virgo. The seventh house. This is the house of partnership and marriage. It oversees partnerships of all kinds, so we're talking business, work, marriage, friendship, whatever. It governs legal affairs, contracts, and unions as well. It also focuses on how one is able to work harmoniously with others. This also covers open enemies and adversaries in professional and business ventures. It is opposite the first house, as one's personality mixes with others to pursue and achieve goals. And the seventh house is naturally ruled by the sign of Libra. We have the eighth house. This is the house of death and regeneration. It's another one of those 3 mystical houses. and this house is often hard to understand. It's also called the house of spiritual transformation. The life forces of sex, birth, death, the afterlife, legacies, and physical and spiritual inheritances fall under this house. Taxes, debts, and partners' money fall within this house as well. It could help give insight on the conditions surrounding one's death. Also consider the house of knowledge, particularly in occult studies and psychic gifts and powers. And the eighth house is naturally ruled by the sign of Scorpio. We have the ninth house. This is the house of mental exploration and long distance travel. So this is the house of the higher mind and self. It governs philosophy, higher education, in-depth studies, particularly of profound subjects, long journeys of the physical body and of the mind, the study of languages, and exploring new ways of thinking via foreign cultures. This is also the house that oversees public expression of ideas, publishing, and literary efforts. It is naturally ruled by the sign of Sagittarius. We have the 10th house. This is the house of career and public standing. It's the opposite of the 4th house. This one covers everything that is outside of the home, not within. It is the house of profession, public and community reputation and status, ambition, aspiration, and attainment. This house describes how one outwardly expresses their talents, how they accept responsibility, where they end up through their own efforts and work, and material success. And this is naturally ruled by the sign of Capricorn. We have the 11th house, which is the house of friends, of hope, and wishes. This is where your long-term goals, dreams, and intellectual pleasures fall under. Individuals' involvement in groups and organizations that relate to family, professions, and work, as well as clubs, society, and political associations that one is a part of, also are categorized in this house. It's also considered the house of idealism and vision, and is naturally ruled by the sign of Aquarius. And last but not least, we have the 12th house, which is the house of secrets, sorrows, and self-undoing. This is the final and most mystical of all the houses. It defines the limitations of one's life, including self-imposed ones. This rules accidents, disappointments, self-defeat, trouble, secret enemies, unseen forces, escapism, asylums, prisons, and hospitals. It's sometimes referred to as the house of karma or the house of spiritual debt due to it governing the punishments and rewards for deeds committed in life. It's deeply linked to psychic gifts and powers, as well as the ability to discover life's hidden meanings, and is actually ruled by the sign of Pisces. And that is all I have for you guys today. I know that was a lot, and that some things are difficult to understand. I 100% get that. Absolutely. But I do hope that this has helped with understanding a little bit more about astrology, what the signs mean, and if you've ever looked at your own chart, helps kind of understand a little bit of your chart, and ultimately helps you understand yourself. I know that I learned a lot, and that I'm going to be going over my own chart. And what I'm thinking of doing for patrons, I think I'm going to post my own specific birth chart and talk through the positionings of my planets and houses for you guys. Let me know if you're interested in that. That's going to be for paid tiers on Patreon. And yeah, that's it. That's all I have for you. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. I'm sorry that I was mushmouth for a good portion of it, but I hope that it helped a little bit. And I hope that you all have a wonderful day. A marvelously magical day. In fact, a marvelously magical Monday. Yeah. I will see you guys in the next video. And I hope you drink plenty of water and take care of yourself. And don't forget to stop every once in a while and look up at the stars, if you can see them, that is. They're beautiful and they are there for you. So, bye. This iced coffee that I made for myself is delicious. Just saying.